For a long time, shark attacks have captivated people's attention, combining equal parts fascination and fear. These apex predators astonish people beneath the waves with their strength, speed, and accuracy. However, when shark encounters turn hostile, they spark mysteries and survival stories. These surprisingly rare occurrences often represent miscommunications between these sea hunters and people. By exploring the causes, contexts, and myths surrounding shark attacks, we can replace fear with knowledge and respect for these incredible animals, which are essential to the health of marine ecosystems. Here are 6 tales. Off the sunny coast of Clearwater, Florida, the Harris family, Father Mark, 45, Mother Linda, 42, and their children Sam, 15, and Lily, 12, set out on what they thought would be a leisurely whale-watching trip on January 12, 2025. Tourists seeking ocean adventures have long gathered at this charming coastline, known for its golden sands and turquoise waters. That morning, a light breeze carried the sound of gulls and the aroma of salt, and the weather was calm. The exceptionally clear water provided a unique view of the colorful marine life below. It looked like the ideal day for a trip. The Harris family boarded a small boat called the Shoreline Spirit, operated by a local tour company that had been offering trouble-free trips for decades. The boat's captain, Dominic Vance, was a seasoned mariner in his late 50s with a weathered face and a calm manner. Among the passengers were various families and couples, but the Harris family stood out. Their excitement was clear as they took pictures and eagerly looked into the water. On that day, the Gulf of Mexico was alive. Pods of dolphins, with their sleek bodies cutting through the waves, danced alongside the boat. Wriggling fish were clutched in the beaks of pelicans as they gracefully dove into the water. About an hour into the trip, Dominic announced they were nearing a region where humpback whales had been sighted earlier in the week. With cameras ready, the passengers gathered around the boat's edges. The Harris family was especially happy. In an attempt to get the ideal shot, Mark, a photography enthusiast, had brought his top-tier camera. The atmosphere shifted slightly as the boat moved further from the coast. The horizon stretched in all directions, and the water grew darker. The passengers' happy chatter quieted as they scanned for any signs of movement. Someone pointed out a whale breaching in the distance, just as Mark was about to lower his camera. After gracefully arching out of the water, the enormous creature plunged back down with a loud splash. Everyone rushed to get a better look, unaware that something else was lurking beneath the surface. The boat's engine noise had attracted a great white shark, a rare visitor to these waters. At more than 15 feet long, its sleek body moved with purpose, making it a formidable predator. Due to the water's vibrations, it had probably been stalking the boat for a few minutes. Eager to get the perfect shot, Mark leaned dangerously over the boat's edge, adjusting his camera's lens with his fingers. Linda, a few feet away, warned him to exercise caution, but her words were drowned out by the noise of the other passengers and the engine. At the other end of the boat, Sam and Lily were excitedly pointing at a different whale in the distance. What happened next came at a terrifyingly rapid pace. When the shark sensed movement near the surface, it rushed upward, its jaws opening in a pink and white flash. With brutal force, it struck the boat's side, sending Mark plummeting into the water. There was a stunned silence for a moment. Then, the screams started. Linda ran to the edge, her hands clutching the railing as she searched desperately for her husband. Breathing heavily and eyes wide with fear, Mark surfaced a few feet away. The shark's powerful jaws clamped down on his leg again before he could even yell. In the water, blood blossomed as a dark cloud that quickly spread. Chaos erupted on the boat. The passengers, pale with fear, scrambled to the other side. With a raw, desperate voice, Linda screamed Mark's name. In a futile attempt to fend off the shark, Dominic, the captain, grabbed a long pole. The predator, however, was unrelenting, violently thrashing its tail to drag Mark beneath the surface. As their mother fell to her knees, Sam and Lily clung to each other in shock, their cries echoing over the water. The shark circled the boat, its dorsal fin slicing through the waves like a blade. Adrenaline surged through Linda, causing her to stagger to the cockpit, where she desperately tried to start the engine. However, they were stranded because the propeller had been damaged in the shark's earlier attack. Another tragedy struck as the passengers huddled together, their fear growing. After breaking free from her brother's hold and racing to the boat's edge, Lily, driven by an instinct to help her father, leaned too far over in her panic. She lost her balance and plunged into the water. Sam's yell came too late. The noise heightened the shark's predatory instincts, causing it to turn instantly. Lily's outstretched hand briefly touched Linda's fingers as she desperately reached out, but the shark was quicker. In a whirlpool of red, Lily was pulled under, struck with terrifying accuracy. The hours that followed were a haze of fear and powerlessness. To stay alert for any sign of the shark, the passengers stayed away from the boat's edges. Sam struggled to comprehend the nightmare that had unfolded, staring blankly at the horizon, while Linda sat still, her face pale and streaked with tears. A rescue boat didn't arrive until late afternoon, despite Dominic having sent out a distress signal earlier. Rescuers found a scene of devastation. Shaking from shock and exhaustion, Linda and Sam were dragged aboard. Despite not being physically hurt, the other passengers carried the weight of witnessing a tragedy they would never forget. Mark and Lily's bodies were never found. The shark had disappeared into the depths, likely alarmed by the rescue boat's approach. The community was shaken by the incident, which was considered one of the deadliest shark attacks in Florida history. In the weeks that followed, Linda and Sam struggled to start over. The once vibrant Harris home was now painfully quiet, with Mark and Lily's absence serving as a constant reminder of what had been lost. Linda began advocating for stricter safety regulations on boat tours, working tirelessly to prevent similar tragedies. Sam, troubled by thoughts of his sister's last moments, channeled his sorrow into a study of marine biology, hoping to understand the animals that had taken his family. With the scars of the attack still visible on its hull, the Shoreline Spirit was retired from service. For the people of Clearwater, the incident served as a sobering reminder of the ocean's unpredictability. Even the most seasoned sailors are unaware of the dangers lurking in the seemingly calm, welcoming waters. The story of the Harris family became a warning to anyone who ventures into the vast, untamed wilderness of the sea. Beneath its glittering surface lies a predator-dominated world where survival is never guaranteed. The waters near Cape Lookout, North Carolina, were teeming with excitement on January 10, 2025. The annual Sharkmaster tournament was in full swing, drawing experienced fishermen and thrill-seekers from across the nation. A long-standing tradition in the region, the tournament was known for its bold competitors and high stakes. The goal was to catch the biggest fish, often putting the competitors in direct contact with the ocean's most dangerous predators. Cape Lookout, renowned for its pristine beaches and treacherous waters, was also a historic site. The region, part of the Outer Banks, was known as the Graveyard of the Atlantic due to its 18th century shipwrecks. In recent decades, conservation efforts have led to an increase in marine life, including sharks. While marine biologists welcomed the return of these predators, events like the Sharkmaster tournament felt more dangerous as a result. Kyle Jensen, a 40-year-old fisherman with over 20 years of experience, was one of the competitors that year. Growing up in the neighboring town of Beaufort, Kyle was familiar with these waters. He was the tournament favorite due to his unwavering skill and calm under pressure. Two close friends, Amos McTeague, a wiry man with a sharp sense of humor, and Jonah Crenshaw, a reserved but dependable deckhand, were on board his boat, the Sea Reaper. It was a sturdy 30-foot vessel equipped with the latest fishing gear. The day had started without incident. The sky was cloudy and a slight breeze caused the water's surface to ripple. Since the first light, Kyle, Amos, and Jonah had been out casting their lines, hoping to make a catch that would earn them a prize. Kyle's intuition and years of experience led the Sea Reaper farther from shore by mid-afternoon. Though the crew had already landed several large fish, Kyle was determined to catch something truly unique. Around 3 p.m., one of the lines snapped taut, breaking the silence. The line was pulled out at a startling rate, causing the reel to scream and the rod to bend under intense pressure. Thinking they had hooked a massive tuna, or perhaps a marlin, Kyle grabbed the rod. His muscles strained as he fought to bring the creature closer, bracing himself against the boat's side. The struggle lasted almost 20 minutes. The power of whatever was on the other end of the line was far greater than anything Kyle had encountered that day. As the boat trembled under the pressure, Amos and Jonah watched with growing anxiety. After a while, a shadowy figure began to emerge from the depths. At first, it seemed like Kyle's wish had come true, a huge fish that would secure his victory in the competition. But as it got closer, the horrifying truth became clear. It was a great white shark. The shark, measuring at least 15 feet in length, surged upward with terrifying speed. Its massive head broke the surface, jaws snapping as it slammed into the side of the Sea Reaper. The impact nearly knocked Kyle off his feet, but he clung to the rod, unwilling to let go of his catch. Amos shouted for him to release the line, but Kyle hesitated, a mix of adrenaline and disbelief clouding his judgment. The shark struck again, this time ramming the boat with enough force to send a spray of water over the deck. In the chaos, Kyle lost his footing. The rod slipped from his hands as he tumbled over the side and into the cold, churning water. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Jonah and Amos yelled Kyle's name as they rushed to the boat's edge. They saw him struggling in the water, trying to swim back toward the Sea Reaper, his arms flailing. But the shark was faster. With a powerful tail sweep, the great white closed the gap. Within seconds, its dorsal fins sliced through the water like a knife. The shark's enormous jaws clamped down, pulling Kyle beneath the surface as the crew watched in horror. As Jonah fumbled with the boat's radio, attempting to call for help, Amos rushed to grab a gaff hook. But it was too late. Kyle had disappeared and the water turned red. There was only silence and the slight rocking of the boat after the shark vanished as quickly as it had appeared. After hearing the distress call, other competitors alerted the Coast Guard, who arrived within an hour. Despite an extensive search, neither Kyle nor the shark could be found. He was reported missing and presumed dead. The crew, shaken and unable to process the tragedy, had the Sea Reaper towed back to shore. As word of the attack spread, the Sharkmaster tournament was overshadowed by the horrifying events. The event, once a source of pride for the community, was now tainted by controversy. Some called for stricter rules, arguing that the competition encouraged reckless behavior in areas known to be home to dangerous predators. Others pointed to conservation efforts and the increased shark population as a reason for people to exercise greater caution when entering these waters. Kyle Jensen's disappearance marked a turning point in the discussion of fishing competitions and their impact on both people and marine life. In Beaufort, Kyle's name was added to a memorial for those who had perished at sea, serving as a sobering reminder of the dangers associated with aquatic life. Jonah Crenshaw and Amos McTeague eventually gave up fishing, troubled by what had happened that day. Jonah moved to Montana, far from the sea that had claimed their friend, while Amos found work as a mechanic in a small inland town. After the Sea Reaper was sold, its new owner changed the ship's name to distance it from its tragic history. As for the great white shark, it was never seen again. Some speculated that the shark had been drawn to the area by the blood and bait used during the tournament, while others believed it was simply a rogue predator acting on instinct. Regardless, its attack on Kyle Jensen served as a chilling reminder of the ocean's unpredictable and often deadly nature. In the years that followed, the Sharkmaster tournament continued, but with new safety measures in place. Participants were required to use heavy-duty gear, and a specialized team of spotters scouted the waters for shark activity. The memory of that fateful day endured, despite these precautions, served as a sobering warning to anyone who dared to confront the sea. Harpswell, Maine, a sleepy fishing village, awoke on June 3, 2024, to a remarkable incident that would haunt its citizens for years to come. Known for its serene waters and thriving lobster industry, Harpswell, with its rugged cliffs and narrow inlets, had always seemed embraced by the Atlantic. The chilly waters, rich with sea life, were free of the dangers often associated with warmer, shark-infested regions. But that morning, the ocean betrayed its reputation. At 5:12 a.m., 36-year-old fisherman Mark Dawson departed the small harbor in his battered vessel, the Morning Star. The sun was just rising, casting gentle oranges and purples across the sky. Having lived in Harpswell all his life, Mark had always enjoyed these early mornings. He was working the traps he'd set the day before, surrounded by the silence of a world still asleep. His father, also a fisherman, had once told him that although the ocean had her moods, she looked out for those who respected her. Mark had always believed that, until the morning of June 4th. Dead Man's Cove, as it is known locally, is a small isolated inlet where the attack occurred. The name was more myth than fact, a holdover from pirate folklore and shipwrecks of the past. But there was a spooky silence there, one that seemed to intensify even the smallest sound. Mark had navigated his vessel into the cove to check a row of lobster traps. The water was unusually still, nearly glassy, reflecting the sun's rays. He disturbed the calm morning as he leaned over the side of the boat to lift a trap. Then, the waters erupted with terrifying force. Before Mark could fully comprehend what was happening, his tiny boat swung violently to one side, throwing him into the icy Atlantic. Disoriented and struggling to breathe, he surfaced and briefly saw a huge gray shadow moving with terrifying precision beneath the surface. The creature crashed into him, sending a sharp, unexpected pain through his torso. The shark's immense power pulled him under momentarily, and Mark's mind reeled in primal terror as he caught a glimpse of its pale underbelly and jagged maw before it released him. Desperate, he clawed his way back to the surface, his limbs burning with effort. The cold water bit into his skin as he struggled to keep his head above the surface. The shark struck again, its immense tail slicing through the water with a ferocious splash, sending waves crashing over him and nearly dragging him down once more. Mark screamed, his voice raw and hoarse, a primal sound that echoed eerily in the silent cove. His strength waned, and his breaths grew shallow, but sheer survival instinct kept him moving. Finally, the predator disappeared, as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving Mark trembling and bleeding in the open water, clutching at the overturned hull of his boat as his vision blurred with exhaustion and fear. Nearby, Roland Vickery, a retired Navy officer, was out on his larger vessel, the Iron Gull. Roland, accustomed to the peaceful existence of recreational boating, heard Mark's terrified cries reverberating over the water. As Roland swung his boat toward the cove, he noticed the Morning Star overturned, its hull displaying deep, sharp gouges that could only have been made by a powerful object. When Roland reached Mark, the fisherman was clinging to the side of his boat, his face pale and his torso bleeding. Roland hauled him aboard and noticed that Mark's clothes were torn apart, seemingly by massive teeth. Mark mumbled incoherently, his voice difficult to understand as he shivered from shock. Roland quickly called authorities, and Mark was rushed to Brunswick's Mid-Coast Hospital. Although Mark sustained severe injuries, they were not life-threatening. What baffled the doctors, however, were the bite marks. Despite the extreme aggression of the attack, the wounds were consistent with those of a great white shark. In Maine's frigid waters, great white shark attacks were almost unheard of. The Maine Marine Patrol launched an investigation. The Morning Star, towed back to the harbor, was examined. Deep grooves in the wooden hull matched the bite radius of a large great white shark. The discovery shook the community. After years of enjoying the ocean without fear, the people of Harpswell began to question whether their waters were still safe. A shark behavior expert from the University of New Hampshire, marine biologist Dr. Ilara Covington, was brought in to provide guidance. Dr. Covington found the case intriguing, but she was also uneasy. While great white sharks rarely ventured as far north as Maine, they were known to frequent the waters off Cape Cod to the south. The colder temperatures and scarcity of prey generally kept them at bay. However, this attack seemed to validate a troubling trend. Warming ocean currents have been driving many species, including sharks, further north in recent years. According to Covington's analysis of the bite marks, the shark was likely an adult great white, measuring more than 15 feet in length. She speculated that the shark might have been lost or pursuing prey when it encountered Mark's boat. However, she was unable to explain the level of aggression. Typically, shark attacks were quick and exploratory, with sharks preferring to avoid humans and boats. The unusual intensity of this attack raised more questions than answers. The shark's attack was so ferocious it nearly killed Mark and left deep scars on the wooden hull of his boat. As news of the incident spread, rumors began to swirl through Harpswell. Some locals speculated that the shark was a rogue predator, one that had developed a taste for human flesh. Others, referencing old tales, whispered about cursed waters and the possibility of supernatural forces at work in Deadman's Cove. Mark's story was reprinted in newspapers and broadcast on local news, turning him into an unwilling celebrity. He repeated the same chilling detail to reporters and investigators. The shark had locked eyes with him before the attack. The Maine Marine Patrol searched for the shark for weeks, but the creature was never spotted again. Despite their efforts to track its movement patterns, deploy drones, and set up baited cameras, it remained elusive. While some locals believed it had moved on, Others feared it was still lurking, waiting for its next victim. Mark's recuperation took a while. Although the physical injuries subsided, the psychological scars persisted. He found work as a dockhand after selling the Morning Star and vowing never to fish again. Despite his complete avoidance of the ocean, he had nightmares about the shark's icy black eyes peering into his soul. Dr. Covington continued researching the incident, and in a paper she published, the attack received a lot of attention from scientists. She cautioned that interactions between people and apex predators like great whites would increase as ocean ecosystems changed due to climate change. However, even she couldn't shake the feeling that this specific attack was unique and defied scientific explanation. The Dead Man's Cove shark attack remained a mystery. The waters eventually returned to their typical calm, and the creature was never located. However, Harpswell's residents were irrevocably altered. They no longer saw the ocean as a benevolent provider. Instead, they viewed it as a capricious force that hid dangers beneath its surface. For Mark Dawson, the dawn no longer brought tranquility as he strolled along the harbor each morning. Instead, it reminded him of the day the ocean betrayed him and the predator that vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Harpswell now saw the mystery of the great white shark as a warning, that nature's untamed power could strike at any time, even in the most tranquil places on Earth. In 2023, tourists flocked to the Bahamas, a sun-drenched paradise eager to escape the routine of their daily lives. The islands, well known for their vibrant coral reefs and turquoise waters, have drawn both nature lovers and thrill-seekers. Travel blogger Chloe Turner, 29, from Portland, Oregon, was one of the many tourists that August. Her online persona focused on her love of the ocean and her spirit of adventure. As an experienced diver with a strong interest in marine life, Chloe was more than just a tourist splashing around in the shallows. However, her ideal getaway would quickly devolve into an unimaginable nightmare. A few days prior, Chloe had arrived in Nassau, excited to capture the Bahamas' unspoiled beaches and undiscovered underwater gems. She boarded a snorkeling tour boat run by Azure Tides Adventures, a small but reputable company that promised an amazing experience early on the morning of August 11th. The boat's captain, Elias Drummond, a wiry man in his late 50s, had been navigating these waters for more than 30 years. He was accompanied by Marcy Lang, the tour guide, a happy but inexperienced employee who had only been with the company for 6 months. Each of the 7 tourists in the group had varied degrees of water experience. Chloe was unique among them, not only because of her self-assured manner, but also because of her equipment, which included a custom-made wetsuit and an expensive underwater camera. Harold Grimsby, a retired school teacher, a Canadian honeymooning couple, and 2 college friends who seemed more interested in taking selfies than snorkeling were among the other members of the group. At 9 in the morning, the boat left the harbor in Nassau. They were heading to a popular snorkeling location near Andros Island. Reefs Haven, a thriving underwater ecosystem brimming with life, was the name of the area. On the other hand, tiger sharks had been seen there on occasion. The group had been reassured by Captain Elias that shark sightings were uncommon and that the animals generally showed no interest in people. Marcy provided a quick safety briefing as the boat anchored close to the reef, stressing the importance of remaining near the group and avoiding abrupt movements that could frighten marine life. However, Chloe was too preoccupied with her camera to focus. Her only objective was to get the ideal picture of a reef shark swimming through the coral. With their vibrantly colored snorkels bobbing on the water's surface, the group dove into the water. The reef was just as stunning as it had been described, with schools of fish darting between coral formations and an explosion of color and movement. Chloe, enthralled with the scene, swiftly moved away from the group and swam farther into the reef while her camera clicked frantically. Unbeknownst to Chloe, she had ventured into a region where the currents became more powerful and the water darker. Open sand replaced the colorful coral and the marine life became less numerous. It was then that she realized for the first time that she wasn't alone in this unsettling space. Harold Grimsby was the first to realize that Chloe was gone when he returned to the boat. When he warned Marcy, she looked out at the water with increasing alarm. When she spotted Chloe's figure in the distance, she called out to her, but the sound was muffled by the waves. Chloe, preoccupied with adjusting her camera, was unaware of the shadow that had begun to circle her. The tiger shark, A massive predator measuring nearly 12 feet in length had likely been drawn by the sound of her camera's shutter or the glint of its lens. Tiger sharks are known for their curiosity and powerful jaws, capable of biting through almost anything. When Chloe finally looked up, she saw the shark's dorsal fin cutting through the water like a knife. Panic surged through her as she realized the danger she was in. She began to swim toward the boat, her movements frantic and uncoordinated. The shark, sensing vulnerability, went into predatory mode. Marcy, now fully aware of the situation, shouted at Chloe to stay calm while Elias grabbed a long pole with a hook on the end and leaned over the side of the boat. Other passengers watched in frozen terror as the shark closed the distance between itself and Chloe. The first blow was unexpected. The shark crashed into her from below. She screamed a sound that would haunt the other passengers for years to come. Blood blossomed in the water as the shark's teeth tore into her leg. Chloe struggled to reach the rope that Elias had thrown into the water despite her wounds. It was a chaotic scene. Marcy yelled instructions that no one could hear, and Elias desperately tried to pull Chloe toward the boat. But the shark was relentless. It grabbed Chloe by the torso and dragged her under the water, churning red as the passengers screamed in horror. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the ocean erupted as Chloe surfaced, struggling to break free from the shark's grip. Harold later described the moment as something out of a nightmare. But Chloe's strength was no match for the predator. With a final violent thrash, the shark pulled her into the depths. The boat remained anchored for hours as search and rescue teams arrived, but there was no trace of Chloe. Divers scoured the area, finding only remnants of her shredded wetsuit and a piece of her camera. The incident made headlines worldwide, sparking debates about the safety of snorkeling tours and the ethical implications of humans encroaching on marine habitats. In the days that followed, Azure Tide's adventures suspended all operations. Marcy Lang quit her job, unable to cope with the trauma, while Elias Drummond faced harsh scrutiny from local authorities and the media. Harold Grimsby, who had captured part of the attack on his GoPro, deleted the footage after receiving death threats from online trolls accusing him of exploiting the tragedy. As for Chloe Turner, her family held a memorial service in her hometown, where her parents expressed hope that her death would serve as a reminder of the unpredictable power of nature. Her blog, once filled with tales of adventure and discovery, remained frozen in time, a haunting testament to a life cut tragically short. The waters of Reef's Haven returned to their serene beauty, but for those who had witnessed the events of August 11, 2023, the memory of Chloe's final moments would forever taint the idyllic paradise of the Bahamas. On the crisp morning of September 22, 2023, the Sea Voyager, a 40-foot sailboat, departed from Barnegat Bay, New Jersey. The crew, composed of seasoned sailors, was embarking on what was supposed to be a routine 2-day journey to the deeper waters of the Atlantic, an area known for its serene beauty and bountiful fishing opportunities. The group was led by Captain Greg Taylor, a 51-year-old with over 3 decades of seafaring experience. Among the crew were his longtime first mate Ivan Rykov, a gruff Ukrainian-born sailor in his late 50s, and 3 others. Elena Farrow, a 34-year-old marine photographer, Lucas Luke Marston, a 29-year-old deckhand, and Robert Latham, a 27-year-old newcomer to the crew who had joined for his first deep-sea voyage. The Atlantic waters that day were mirror-like, unusually calm for late September. The weather forecast had predicted smooth sailing, and the crew was in high spirits as they ventured farther from the New Jersey coastline. The Sea Voyager was equipped with the latest safety equipment, and its sturdy fiberglass hull had endured worse conditions in the past. With no storms on the radar, there was little concern about potential dangers. The crew adapted to their roles as the day went on. Ivan managed navigation, while Greg oversaw the engine's condition. Elena used her camera for hours to capture the peace of the sea, taking pictures of rolling waves and far-off seabirds. The evening meal was a straightforward stew that Luke and Robert prepared together to keep the crew going. The group was unaware of the predator hiding beneath the surface by the time the sun started to set, illuminating the horizon with pink and orange hues. Unbeknownst to the crew, the boat had been circling an estimated 18-foot great white shark. It had probably been drawn in by the boat's engine's low hum and the subtle aroma of leftover fish from previous preparations. This shark wasn't your average one. It was larger, older, and more aggressive than the majority of its kind. It might have been a renegade predator, fed up with smaller prey. Just after sunset, the attack started abruptly. The crew of the Sea Voyager was startled when the shark suddenly and violently crashed into the hull. The sailors rushed to evaluate the damage after the shock. Ivan yelled orders to stabilize the ship, while Greg headed to the stern to check the impact point. Before they could fully process what was happening, the shark struck once more, breaking through the surface and slamming its enormous body into the boat. The second impact had disastrous results. The boat tipped violently, the hull cracked, and water started to pour in. Greg was tossed into the water after being closest to the stern. Despite shouting his name, the crew was unable to find him in the gloomy sea. Shortly after, the shark surfaced once more, dragging Greg under with terrifying speed, and screams broke out. The rest of the crew went into a panic. Elena snatched up a life jacket and dove into the water in the hopes of locating Greg, but the shark soon targeted her. Before he could secure a lifeboat, the ship capsized despite Ivan's best efforts to launch it. Robert and Luke held onto the side of the capsized hull, yelling for assistance that never came. In the horror that followed, the shark struck with deliberate accuracy. As the water erupted in red splashes, it killed the crew one by one. Next to perish were Ivan and Luke. Their screams interrupted when the shark sprang from below. Knowing that he was the only crew member left, Robert followed his instincts. He sought refuge in the tiny pocket of trapped air beneath the overturned hull. The hours that ensued were a terrifying survival test. With his body shaking from the cold water and his head spinning from the carnage he had witnessed, Robert clung to the inside of the hull. As he listened for any movement, he could hear the shark circling and slapping the water with its strong tail. Robert managed to stay hidden for 2 days, surviving only on his strength and the meager supply of water that had been kept in an emergency kit. From his hiding place, he could hear search planes humming in the distance, but was unable to signal them. When a fishing trawler passed by the wreckage early on the 3rd day, it sent a dinghy to investigate. When the rescuers found Robert, he was barely conscious, his skin pale and his body weak from dehydration and exposure. He muttered incoherently about the shark and the attack, his words fragmented but enough to piece together the gruesome chain of events. Around the world, the incident garnered media attention. A single great white shark attacked the Sea Voyager, a behavior anomaly that left marine experts perplexed, investigators later confirmed. The bodies of the other crew members were never recovered, and the wreckage of the boat was towed back to shore as evidence. The sailing community was shaken to its core, and new safety protocols were implemented for deep-sea expeditions, including reinforced hulls and mandatory emergency beacons. As for Robert, he never sailed again. The experience left him with deep psychological scars, and he chose to retreat from public life. He later described his survival as both a miracle and a curse, haunted by the memory of his crewmates and the predator that had claimed them. The attack on the Sea Voyager served as a grim reminder of the ocean's unpredictability and the primal forces that still lurked beneath its surface. On the morning of March 14, 2024, the small coastal town of Beaufort, South Carolina, awoke to a calm sea and clear skies. Generations of fishermen had prospered along the town's shores, which was well known for its extensive maritime history. Jack Carter, a 55-year-old veteran fisherman who had spent decades navigating the Atlantic waters, was one of them. Jack was well known among the locals for his unmatched expertise and his preference for fishing alone, even in deep waters. He got the Blue Horizon, his small boat, ready for what appeared to be another ordinary journey that morning. Jack's chosen fishing technique was drift fishing. He had to cast long fishing lines into the open water while keeping his boat motionless. He liked the solitude of this approach, and the slow bobbing of the boat had a meditative rhythm for him. A search operation was launched immediately. A dozen boats combed the waters, joined by a helicopter scanning from above. By nightfall, Jack's boat was found drifting about 8 miles off the coast. It was empty. Inside, investigators discovered signs that something had gone wrong. Fishing lines were tangled and frayed. One of Jack's boots lay discarded on the deck, and faint streaks of blood smeared the edge of the boat's railing. There was no sign of Jack himself. Over the next 2 days, the search intensified. Divers explored the surrounding waters while sonar equipment scanned the depths. Then came a grim discovery. Several of Jack's fishing lines were found a mile from where his boat had been recovered. They were tangled with bits of torn fabric that matched the clothes Jack had been wearing. Worse still, bloodstains were found along the lines, accompanied by deep bite marks. Marine experts identified the marks as belonging to a great white shark. The conclusion was both horrifying and puzzling. Evidence suggested that Jack had been pulled into the water during a shark attack. However, great white sharks were not commonly seen so close to shore in this region, and attacks on humans were exceedingly rare. Theories began to circulate. Some speculated that Jack's baited lines had attracted the shark, triggering a frenzied response. Others whispered darker ideas, claiming the shark's behavior seemed unusually deliberate, almost as if it had targeted Jack specifically. While such notions lacked scientific basis, they fueled unease among the town's residents. One man, particularly shaken by the incident, was Ernie Caldwell, a fellow fisherman and longtime friend of Jack. Ernie recalled how Jack often joked about his luck at sea, claiming he had a sixth sense for avoiding danger. For Jack to fall victim to such a fate felt almost cruelly ironic. Ernie, along with other fishermen, grew hesitant to venture far from the shore in the following weeks. Local authorities, assisted by marine biologists, launched an investigation into the shark's behavior. Dr. Lenora March, a marine ecologist, examined the evidence and determined that the shark's attack was likely an accident. She explained during a community meeting that sharks were curious creatures. They often investigated unfamiliar objects, and unfortunately, their method of investigation involved biting. Despite her reassurances, the fear among the townspeople lingered. The disappearance of Jack Carter became a local legend. Some claim to have spotted the great white, a massive creature with a jagged dorsal fin, lingering near the area where Jack's boat had been found. Others embellished the story, describing the shark as a malevolent force, almost supernatural in its cunning. Over time, Jack's story transformed into a cautionary tale for those who dared to test the open waters alone. Although Jack's body was never recovered, a memorial service was held in his honor. Friends and family gathered at the harbor to pay tribute to the man who had spent his life at sea. The blue horizon, carefully restored by Ernie and others, was anchored near the shore as a silent reminder of Jack's legacy. Years later, the mystery of Jack Carter's disappearance remained a subject of fascination. Tourists visiting Beaufort often asked about the fisherman who vanished without a trace. For the locals, it was a stark reminder of the ocean's unpredictable nature. Jack's story served as both a warning and a testament to the risks faced by those who made their living from the sea, where beauty and danger coexisted in the vast, unyielding waters.